Welcome to the initiative on quantitative aptitude. We know that if 4 bananas cost rupees 30, then 6 cost 30 by 4 into 6. And in general, if A corresponds to B, then C corresponds to B by A into C, or B into C by A, or B into C by A, when the entity corresponds to A and B are directly proportional. That is, if that entity increase, the other one also increase. Using this, we discuss some more problems on simple interest. An amount deposited at 5% simple interest becomes 1512 in 4 years. How much the same amount will become in 2.5 years at 10% simple interest per annum? So an amount is deposited at 5% rate of interest. It becomes 1512 in 4 years. We have to find out how much the same amount will become in 2.5 years at 10% simple interest per annum. So for this, we assume that the principal amount is 100. If the principal amount is 100, then 100 becomes at simple interest 5% in 4 years. 100 plus interest for 4 years. So interest for 4 years is 5 into 4. So it becomes 100 plus 5 into 4, that is 120. So 120 corresponds to here 1512. What we want? We want the 100, the same 100. Suppose the 100 is deposited at 10% for 2.5 years. Then it will become 100 plus interest at 10% for 2.5 years. That is 100 plus 10 into 5 by 2. That is 100 plus 25. That is 125. So when 120 corresponds to 1512, what does 125 correspond to? So we have to divide 1512 by 120, multiply that by 125. So if you divide 120 and 125 by 5, so it is 125. If you cancel that 5 on both 120 and 125, then divide by 1500, divided by 1512, we get 63 into 25, which is 1575. So the answer is choice 2. But without using A corresponds to B, what does C corresponds to this? If you do by calculating the principal amount, we have to use we can do that by calculating the principal amount also. So for that, if 100 at 5% in 4 years becomes, already we have seen 120. So 120 corresponds to 100. So what does 1512 corresponds to? So the principal amount is 100 by 120 into 1512, which is 1260. So now we have to calculate the interest for 1260 at 10% rate for 2.5 years, and then we have to add that with 1250. So by that using the PNR formula, PNR by 100 formula, we can do that. Or as shown in the screen, 100 becomes 125. What does 1260 becomes? So if we calculate, we get 125 by 100 into 1260, which is 1575. So by calculating the principal amount, we can do the problem. But if we use the previous one, A corresponds to B, then what does C corresponds to? We can very quickly solve this problem. And a similar problem, but here simple interest accrued is given, not the amount becomes is given. Simple interest accrued on certain sum of principal is 1200 in 4 years at the rate of 8% per annum. What would be the simple interest accrued for thrice that principal, not the same principal amount, 3 times the principal amount at the rate of 6% in 3 years. So here also, if you take the principal amount as 100, then the interest for 4 years at 8% rate is 4 into 8, 32. So here the simple interest is given as 1200. So 32 corresponds to 1200. But in the second rate, thrice the principal amount is invested. So if you assume the principal amount as 100, thrice that is 300. So for 100 at 6% rate for 3 years, the interest is 3 into 6 for 100. So for 300, it is 3 into 3 into 6. So when 32 corresponds to 1200, we want what 3 into 3 into 6 corresponds to. So we have to divide 1200 by 32 or 4 into 8 and multiply that by 3 into 3 into 6. So if you cancel 2 with 6 and 8 and then in the denominator we get 4 into 4, which is 16. If we divide 1200 by 16, it is 75. So we get 75 into 3 into 3 into 3, that is 75 into 27. So the answer is 2025. So answer choice 3 is the answer. This problem can also be solved by finding the principal amount, etc. If you take the principal amount as x, then x into 4 into 8 by 100 is 1200. Okay. If you take the principal amount as x, then the at 4% rate, 4 years, for 4 years, 8% rate, the interest for the amount x is x into 4 into 8 by 100. We are given that is equal to 1200. So we get x into 4 into 8 by 100 is 1200. So if we cross multiply 4 and 8 by 100 to the right hand side, it becomes 1 by 4 into 100 by 8. After simplification, you can see that x equal to 3750. So if the principal amount is 3750, how much is invested in the second rate of interest? 3 times the principal amount. So the amount invested here is 3750 into 3. So the interest for 3750 into 3 for 3 years at 6% rate of interest is 3 into 3750 into 3 into 6 by 100, which again simplifies to 75 into 27, which is 2025. So if we use the form A corresponds to B, then what does C corresponds to? We can very quickly solve simple interest problems like this. So thank you for watching. Work hard to succeed. Wish you all success.